So without much ado, I'll hand the floor over to Bruce, who's going to take you on a joyride to Memorial University, right?
Yes, thank you, Christian. Thank you to the organizers of this conference for giving me an opportunity to come back some 30-odd years later. Although I have been back for vacation since, but sort of driving down here yesterday was kind of like going back in time. Although I did have a better car. That was a good thing. Anyways, I think I'm the sole representative of our province and our university here today, I think. And so I've tried to have a kind of a general introduction to things, and I've tried to talk a little bit about both the public sector activities and the private sector activities in our part of the world. And most Newfoundlanders believe that nobody knows where they are. And, oh wait, now this is not working. How do we get this to go down? I tried that one. Maybe it's up. Maybe it's over. Spacebar? Let's try it. We're technologically challenged. Okay, there we go. Goody. Those work? Okay, bit of a learning experience there. Just so everybody knows where we are, our campus is on the eastern tip of the continent, actually, I guess. And we have another campus in Corner Brook, which is on the west coast, which is a slightly more pleasant place. They actually have seasons there. And of course, we are here. If I located this dot roughly correctly, unfortunately, the map that I pinched there didn't have a border on it, so we may actually be in New Brunswick according to that. But you get the idea, and I think for most people, it's familiar enough. So we're not very far away as the crow might fly. Unfortunately, as the airlines fly, we are a long ways away. And so getting back and forth is a bit of a challenge, but worth it, I think. Okay, come on.
Let's try this.
Strike this one? No, this thing is just not cooperating. Just hang on, we get rid of this menu. All right, now we can try this. Ah, there we go. It's just a bit slow. It's a bit like me as I get older. Memorial University, which is the university that I work for now, and I am a late career academic because I worked for the National Research Council before coming to the university about 7 years ago. Memorial was founded in 1925. I gather a fair number of people in the audience have at least done some time there. We have about 11,000 students full-time. Frequently in the university's advertising material you will see 18,000 students, but that is everybody who has ever registered for any sort of extension course of any kind. And so we have, the main campus is in St. John's, and that's kind of a picture. You can see it's about the same size actually as this campus physically. Because that campus was done in the 60s, the buildings just look different. But it's not too different in terms of size. We also have a thing called the Marine Institute, which is really a polytechnic, very heavily oriented towards ocean activities, fisheries, aquaculture, ships officers, that sort of thing. We have a nice little campus in Grenfell, which concentrates on arts. And we have a little outpost in Harlow, England, which allows students to go back and forth to the UK. It's really just a residence with a few meeting rooms. We have sort of the regular faculties. We're what we call in Canada a comprehensive university, which means we have a medical school. That's really what that means. And engineering is part of that, which is where I come from. And then we have I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, what the difference between faculties and schools are, except in terminology. And we have the Marine Institute Polytechnic. And let's try it. Okay, now things are working. So I'm going to zoom through. I could talk about engineering, but Chris did put me on a short leash, so I'm going to go directly to what our group is. We operate the only undergraduate engineering, naval architecture, ocean engineering program in Canada. There are other schools that operate graduate programs, but we're the only place where you can get the professional degree, which entitles you to become a professional engineer. Our program is fully cooperative, which means that students have to do a certain number of work placements. They have 6 opportunities, they have to get 4 of them. So they have to go to work for 1 semester 4 times in order to graduate. And that has been quite a successful thing because students are certainly work ready, I guess. So we're kind of in a way very job oriented program. Our current student numbers in ocean engineering especially are about 25 to 30 students per year. And so that's the number that we're putting through. When I came through this same program, there were 2 of us. So that's 30 years ago. That's where we've moved to in that time. We have 10 regular faculty, which is, the provincial government has been very kind, particularly to our faculty in the last couple of years, and we have been able to expand our faculty numbers substantially. We've almost doubled in terms of that. So we're currently up to 10, and you can see some of the research areas that people are working in there now. So that's the kind of the areas of interest. Okay, so that's enough about the university and enough about where I come from. I'm going to try and talk a little bit about the sector now, and I did spend about 4 years of my life working as kind of for part of the industry development branch of the National Research Council. So essentially on the private sector in Newfoundland, and I'm only going to talk about ocean technology here. So I'm going to exclude the fishery, the actual offshore industry, the marine transportation business. These are the companies that are producing technologies that support most of those things. So these are the technology companies, not the primary industries. We have about 60 companies here. Our commercial revenues are about 300 million per annum into that group. On the public sector side, we have quite a large collection of experimental facilities. Some of them are federal, which is the outfit I used to work for. So the sort of the national towing tank, ocean engineering, ship testing facilities are in St. John's. Memorial itself has a bunch of what we call related institutions. The Marine Institute is one, another outfit called Seacor, which does mostly Arctic research. They have the Ocean Sciences Center for the biology side of the equation, which is a lab down on the coast. And they have a marine station in Bombay, which is a sort of a plum place to go because Bombay is next to Grossmore National Park, or actually it's in Grossmore National Park. And a summer in Bombay is a fairly coveted assignment for almost anybody. So they operate, so essentially the university is the kind of the provincial arm of the research infrastructure, and the National Research Council is the federal arm of the local research infrastructure. If we count everybody, all the people who work for public sector and private sector within the community, there's about 1,600 people. The companies, as I say, mostly emphasizing technology. Institutions, mostly sort of experimental work. The R&D budgets for both of those groups, just the R&D budgets, are about 15 million in private and about 30 million runs through the public sector groups. And 30 million does not count the salaries of the public sector group. If we do that, it goes up. I've just put a little, if anybody wants to know more, there's an outfit called Oceans Advance, which is a kind of a publicly supported industry representing group, which maintains a website which gives you much more detail and statistics on what's going on and the number of companies. And they produce this fabulous map which makes every company look like they've got 10 lines of business. It's but it does give you an idea of what everybody's into. Okay, just to give you some idea of what the sort of the activity focus is, for the private sector groups, it's about 1/3 products, 2/3 services. So people are producing, I think Barry mentioned Low-Tech. Low-Tech is one of those companies that produces a product. And a lot of these things are ocean-related sensors and communication technologies. And Low-Tech would be one of those. Another one is this subsea imaging. That's actually a fish. And I'm an engineer, so it's an ugly fish. And for but that's an image that this subsea group captured, and actually it's quite interesting. I don't know how well it translates there, but it looked really cool when I saw it. The other, so that is in many ways, in terms of products and things, the majority of the activities. And so we also have a fairly strong group in simulation and training. And when Chris asked me to talk about a success story, I'm going to talk about one of those. GIS consulting and products, and this is sort of geographic location things. I'll make reference to this too. I don't know how familiar. We've had a bit of an oil boom for the last 15 years, which has come to a kind of an abrupt halt this year. And it's had some funny effects, really. On the one hand, we're all much richer than we were, and the price of housing in St. John's is obscene. But on the other hand, it's kind of diverted a lot of attention away from these sort of technology businesses, and servicing the oil industry has become a fairly significant part of the whole technology business. And this is the last two. So you see offshore oil-related services, which are things like diving and things like that, and consulting engineering has taken quite an uptick for that. On the public sector side, as I say, we've got a pretty good collection, actually, of physical testing facilities. We've got enormous tanks. We've got things for doing fishing equipment. We've got, we've got the national facility for doing ice-breaking research, which means a tank that we can refrigerate and run ship models and things like that through. So most of our public sector work is very heavily oriented towards experimental work and in sort of commercial evaluation. Okay, so Chris did specifically ask me to talk about a success story, and VMT is probably one of it. I think Neville mentioned this last night. VMT is a company that started essentially out of a requirement to try and improve lifeboat evacuation and rescue safety. And in fact, rescuing offshore, getting into lifeboats, any of those activities are exceptionally dangerous. There are actually more people killed in lifeboat drills than are saved in lifeboats. So, and at one point, the health and safety executive in the North Sea was thinking about saying, let's just do away with lifeboats. But psychologically, that leaves people in a bad situation. How do we get out of here? So a research program started essentially between the NRC and the university, and it came down to the fact that simulation is in fact the only safe way to train people to do these things. And it's been proven that training does improve their chances of success, even if it's not real. And of course, so that was the early stages of things. Simulation started to look like a real good way of doing this. This spawned a company called VMT, Virtual Marine Technology. And they have made quite a good success out of both building simulators for what we call small craft simulators. So not the big sort of bridge simulation that you see for deck officer training, but the kind of training that gets you into a fast rescue craft, and the motions are much more violent and all these other things. So they have made a specialty out of doing small craft simulators. And that has been a success because, as I say, really the only safe way to train people in evacuation, lifeboat launching, picking people up in fast rescue craft is to do it by simulation, because it's just too dangerous to do it for real. And so that collaboration has been going over the last 15 years ago. The company has gone along. Most recently, they've sponsored Husky, which is one of the offshore operators, and VMT have sponsored an insert chair. And you know how universities love chairs, and not just the ones you sit on, but the ones that that attract money and things like that. So in a way, it's come full circle. So the research was a success, the company was a success, and now it's kind of come back to reward the university, which is a strategy that they don't pay enough attention to, in my estimation. So that's our little success story. He also asked me to talk about some regional challenges. As I say, we're sort of waking up from a binge of oil-induced wealth, and the hangover is substantial. It's funny, the provincial government was quite dependent on oil revenues as part of its budget, and they've had to do things. They've had to raise taxes and things like that. We're still, in fact, no worse than any of the other Atlantic provinces, but everybody thinks that the crisis has arrived. Armageddon has come. Everybody is threatening to leave the province, but it's not. That everybody will get over that. And but and in a way, I'm hoping that what it will do is push us back in the direction that we were heading 10 years ago, which was more of these sort of technology collaborations. So that was one of the reasons I was sort of happy to come down here. Our other two challenges actually are associated with the fact that the institutions in our grouping, our cluster, if you want to call it that, are kind of used to being the big kids on the block. And the companies individually are relatively small, although collectively they're not that small. But the university, the National Research Organization, things like this, they're kind of used to making the rules. And so things like intellectual property agreements with the research organizations have become issues. Obviously, companies want to own their IP, naturally, or they at least want to be able to pay the university and get it. These have all become a little bit of a sticking point. The other issue is that the sort of the reduced funding issue has made the institutions a little more aware of where their money is coming from. Because frequently governments will say, well, fine, you can carry on as long as you make your own money. For public sector organizations, that is a challenge, and it means that they start sort of muscling in on where companies should be, and they tend not to be as charitable as they probably should be in these collaborations. So those are things to look out for from our point of view, and things that we have to kind of figure out how to manage. I should point out, because this workshop is all about collaboration between two regions, I should point out that Newfoundland has had this idea of an ocean tech cluster for quite a long time, and they've renamed it 2 or 3 times, but the idea has been there for a long time. And Ireland has done similar things. And for a while, because there is a fairly significant Irish component in Newfoundland, there was a big attraction to sort of saying, well, let's go make a deal with the Irish. And I have to say I was a beneficiary of this in many ways, because I had many very pleasant trips to Ireland for in some occasions for meetings like this. And in the end, it all, some things came out of it, but certainly not as much as everybody hoped, I think. And there are some things that I would consider sort of lessons learned in our experiences in Ireland. But I would say Ireland is a lovely place to visit if you haven't already had the opportunity, and I enjoyed my things. But I tried to pick out 3 things that might be a help, I guess, to this thing. And one of it is focus. And this is kind of an institutional thing as well. Institutions are happy to talk about generalities, but companies like to get focused fairly quickly. And so I think it's important when you're trying to pursue these things is to get focused on something. Find something that you want to do, whether it's an academic collaboration or whether it's a business-to-business thing, is to try and figure out what it is you're going to chase. And you have to chase something, because something, if there's no money in it, not much happens. And so specifics, particular customers or particular markets or things like that are probably more attractive. And I think that's one of the things we didn't spend enough time on in the Irish thing. The other thing is that frequently 2 groups who have exactly the same skills attempt to collaborate. That's not always a good thing. I think it's probably more productive to look for skills that you don't have and then try and build some sort of mutually beneficial thing rather than trying to do the same thing twice as much. So I would say, in a way, it's collaborate with the skills you need, not the skills you have. And my last one is kind of a pushback on this institutional running the show. Try and make these collaborations where the companies actually lead and that the institutions play a supporting role. That's, I think, one of the lessons that we could also take out of the whole Irish thing. And it keeps everybody's eye on the ball a little better, I think. So I think that's it.
You went over time.
I went over time? That's pretty normal. I am a professor. I'm sort of programmed around 50 minutes.